pretty much all of us were brought up and fed this belief that motherhood is this puppies and rainbows, the most amazing place you will ever reach. Your life will never be the same, and it'll be the best thing ever. I think the only thing that all of that gets it right is that your life will never be the same.
Hey there, my name is Dr. Beth Russell, and I want to know, what would you do if you were not afraid? Right now, what would your life, your job, your relationships look and feel like if you could be unapologetically you? What's holding you back? This podcast is for anyone that wants to make a change but isn't sure where to start. Let's look inward together and let's talk about you and me, our mental health, our self-care, inner and outer selves, and all that makes us, well, us. It's time to get real, feel the feels, challenge what's holding us back, and connect. This is the Authentic and Brave podcast. I'm excited to have Maria Umachuk on the podcast today. Maria is a certified transformational coach who helps moms heal from postpartum depression and anxiety without the use of medication. With her unique coaching approach that blends EFT, or emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping, self-compassion work, and deep knowledge of maternal mental health, she helps moms heal their own childhood traumas, break free from the dysfunctional familial patterns, and eliminate shame and guilt so that they can thrive in motherhood and create new healthy family norms for themselves and their children. Maria, thank you so much for being here today with me.
Oh, hi, Beth. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Me too. I was looking through your wonderful website, looking all about you and all that you bring to the world and to moms and families. And I'd love just to start off and have you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what brought you to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a coach for moms, and I am a transformational EFT coach. For anyone who hasn't heard of EFT, it stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping. And I specialize in helping moms heal from postpartum depression and anxiety in a holistic way without medication. And I do that through using my unique approach of blending EFT tapping, self-compassion work and meditations. And also I bring in my knowledge of maternal mental health to help moms heal their own childhood traumas, break free from their dysfunctional familial patterns, and also to eliminate shame and guilt so that they can thrive in motherhood and that they feel good and healthy, and that they create new healthy family norms for themselves and their children. And I thought it ties in so well with the podcast because it is about being authentic and brave. And I feel like there's nothing more authentic, especially for us moms, than to get rid of all the garbage that we have collected through our sort of family history and the generational trauma that has just accumulated for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as moms that we do get so caught up in taking care of everybody else, and understanding what's going on in our own bodies and our hearts and our minds can sometimes get jumbled with everything that we have to do. So could you talk a little bit for those that don't know, what is postpartum depression?
Yeah, absolutely. So postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, it is a depression or anxiety with what's considered perinatal onset. So typically it's within the first 6 months after giving birth is when it's considered that you're having your postpartum depression. That is what it is officially on the books. In reality, your postpartum depression and anxiety can settle in within the first year. And another thing that I think confuses people is when they hear the term postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, they feel like it has an ending point, that it's somehow different from your regular depression or anxiety. And it has an ending point that once I'm out of the immediate postpartum period, it's just going to lift. And that's a misconception. That's why I like to tell my clients that the reason why it's called postpartum depression anxiety is because of its onset, of when it started, not because it's different from your regular anxiety or depression that is just going to go away on its own. It is just as pervasive. If you don't take care of it, it could be there for years. It can become worse. And for a lot of moms, this might be their very first time that they're experiencing postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. that happened to me. For me, that was my very first instance of having a diagnosable clinical depression. Never had that before in my life. And the unfortunate part is, even though that's the first time, chances are it's not the last time, unless we heal the trauma underneath. That's the only caveat that I will give, is that if you heal the trauma underneath, that depression and anxiety does not have to come back into your life.
I think so many women become really scared after having a baby, that they are feeling low, or they are feeling sort of the blues, and they go to their doctor and the doctor says, well, you have some postpartum. And there is that idea of like, oh no, this is a short term, like it's only 2 months or 6 months. I mean, if you think about it, like our bodies, we're pregnant for almost a year, and the hormones, and so we don't even have a baseline of really what's going on with us after we have a baby. And so that anxiety and depression can last a lot longer than just the short 6 months that they say, diagnostically that's there.
Yeah. And again, my point is that diagnostically, it's the onset. It's when it starts. It's not how long it lasts. I think that's what people get confused on and caught up on. Unfortunately, it doesn't have an expiration date. And you're right. The baseline is reset once we're postpartum. That's the thing. We're functioning from a new baseline. So what used to be true for you before you had baby might never, ever be true for you again. And in some ways, with each child you have, your baseline gets reset. And we have to get accustomed to the new reset line and accommodate our bodies. So yeah, it's a confusing topic. We don't get nearly enough support, especially because not everyone has a therapist that they were going to before, so that they're going to reach out to postpartum. And unfortunately, our OBs and our general doctors are not educated on mental health enough to be able to give us support. We're lucky if we have an OB that is partnering with a mental health office and can refer you. Well, a lot still don't. So you're left on your own in this very vulnerable time when you need this help and you need the support.
And I also think even with friends, some women don't experience the same after birth depression, anxiety. And I think sometimes women are just even careful to say anything to their partners or to other moms for fear of being seen as less than, or that dreaded belief, oh, I'm somehow a bad mom if I'm having some depression or low energy, or I don't feel like engaging with my child the way that, quote unquote, I'm supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a big stigma. There's stigma against mental health in general. And there's definitely stigma against addressing your mental health when you're a mom, because pretty much all of us were brought up and fed this belief that motherhood is this puppies and rainbows, the most amazing place you will ever reach. Your life will never be the same, and it'll be the best thing ever. I think the only thing that all of that gets it right is that your life will never be the same when you become a mom.
Right.
But while there are those amazing moments, we like to skip the hardship. And, the previous generations, sometimes when you talk to them, it feels like they've forgotten it. In reality, this is what we do with trauma. You have so much trauma, you block it out of your mind. So the unfortunate part that your mom or a mother-in-law who's super judgy of you is because she was so traumatized by her postpartum experience. She completely blocked it out and created a different story in her head. Because if she didn't, she wouldn't be able to function. Because when she was a mom, going to therapy wasn't appropriate, wasn't okay. There was no place for her to process it. So that's the only way. And unfortunately, that trauma gets passed on to, let's say, us. And so, yeah, you're right. Not all women experience this, but it's a hefty percentage. About 20% of US moms will have postpartum depression or anxiety. And I think after COVID, it actually went up to closer to 23% now. So yeah, it's not going away. It's not even decreasing. That's the sad part.
And I almost think that maybe it's even higher than that, given that we haven't normalized that this happens, and normalized mental health and taking care of ourselves separate from our children. Taking care of our children is important, but taking care of ourselves, I think you even say on your website, moms are the heart and the soul of the family. And if mom's struggling, if the heart and soul is struggling, everyone's struggling. So taking care of yourself is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, we're not taught that because we were brought up by a generation of women who couldn't afford themselves that. And so they couldn't teach us to do that. And we still don't feel safe because it's true. There's so many other mothers that will come out and will judge you when you're doing this, because we're still holding on to this ideal of the perfect mother, and the perfect mother being this martyr who has no life or wishes of her own, that she's just there to serve everybody except herself. But when you look at it, that is not a way of life that leads to health. That is not a way of life where you are fulfilled. And a lot of moms do this because in some ways they're scared of losing their partners. In reality, that is the number one way you're going to lose your partner, is you're going to become a shell of yourself. They're just going to leave you. They're not going to appreciate all of that. And that is what's driving a lot of women and a lot of the fears. And our kids are also, they're meant to grow up, and maybe when they're 30 years old, they'll appreciate what we put in for
maybe when they become parents.
Yeah, or maybe not, right? So it's not like, I'm not saying we shouldn't be investing in our families and our children. We just shouldn't forget about ourselves. And it's important to pour into our cup before we pour into everybody else's around us. And when you approach it that way, you actually realize that you can have a motherhood that's fulfilling, authentic to you, because you're not forgetting about yourself, but also your kids are happier. Your husband's probably more satisfied because they're still the woman that he fell in love with. And you love yourself. And that's really important for keeping it sort of all together for you.
Are you a therapist looking to grow your practice and help more people in need? Look no further than Headway. Headway is the leading therapy referral platform that connects individuals with top-rated therapists in their area. By joining the Headway network, you'll have access to a steady stream of new clients who are seeking the help and support that you provide. Being a Headway therapist allows you the flexibility and support you need to promote your services and increase your visibility in the community. Joining the Headway network is easy and free. Simply sign up online, create a profile, and start receiving referrals from individuals who are seeking your expertise. Head on over to www.authenticandbrave.com/Headway to get started today. Absolutely. And, that's where I look at the brave part. The authentic part is admitting this is what I'm going through and I want to talk about it, or I need some help, and reaching out, whether it's for professional help or whether it's just a friend. Either way, just talking about it and allowing what they're experiencing to be true. So can you talk a little bit about EFT and how that helps people? A lot of people may not have even heard of what EFT is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't heard of it up until like a year and a half ago when I was researching and looking for something. So EFT is a form of somatic therapy. And what makes it somatic is that we're using our body in order to heal our emotions and our thoughts. And it's called tapping because that's literally what you're doing. You're tapping on about 20 acupressure points that are around your head and your upper body and then on your hand. You're physically tapping with your other fingers. And because those points are located on your autonomic nervous system, you're healing your nervous system through so many ways. It's a multisensory approach because you are touching your nervous system through those points. There's resonance happening from the tapping, and that is both activating and calming to your nervous system. And then in tapping, aside from the somatic experience, we're bringing in words. So we're bringing in a little bit of kind of cognitive behavioral therapy in there, where we talk about our problem first, and then we bring in reframes, which are basically the positive ways of looking at a problem, or how we're replacing a negative thought with a positive thought. So usually when I work with people on tapping, we focus in the beginning a lot on all the negatives, because that's what we're doing. We're essentially, I equate it to taking out your emotional garbage. We're digging up the traumas, and we're digging up all the hurts and everything that's been suppressed in you and has been giving you health issues a lot of the times, mental health, physical health, but these things have been eating away at you for years. But what's good with EFT is we do it in a gentle way. So I would never re-traumatize my patient. And if somebody doesn't feel comfortable talking about their trauma, we don't even actually have to talk about it in order to get healing. It could just be in their head, just with the tapping, just knowing that there's another person. So it's a very gentle way to get through the trauma. We do get tears a lot, but tears, they're good tears. They're basically an emotion has started moving and we get the tears. And then we experience relief. And once we see some relief is when we come in with the reframes, with the positive messages that we want to reprogram ourselves to. And that allows our nervous system to finally get out of that fight or flight or freeze, whatever you've been in, and actually reboot and start working again the way that it's supposed to. And then you start seeing things like your mental health improves, your physical health improves. A lot of our chronic issues have an emotional underpinning. We're now finding research that all autoimmune diseases have some sort of a serious trauma underneath, whether it's your own personal trauma or it's a generational trauma. But there's a big emotional component to all autoimmune diseases. And EFT helps with getting that emotion out of there so that your body can finally get back to healing itself.
Are you a fan of young adult fiction, magic, and adventure? Then you won't want to miss Kindreds, the thrilling new fantasy novel from author B.B. Russell. Join our heroine, 16-year-old Lila, after the death of her last living relative when she reconnects with a boy named Joey from her childhood who harbors a secret. Needing to know what it is, Lila follows him and finds herself in Carnival Noliana, a disappearing world of magic and wonder, hidden just beyond the veil of the ordinary that is looking for 10 new members. With Noliana set to disappear at the end of Masquerade in 4 days, Lila must decide if she should follow her heart and Joey into Noliana for good, or trust her instincts and intellect that Noliana may not be what it seems. With unforgettable characters, a battle between listening to one's head or one's heart, and heart-pounding action, Kindreds is the perfect choice for anyone who loves young adult fantasy. So don't wait, pick up your copy today and embark on an epic adventure you won't soon forget. Kindreds by B.B. Russell is now available at your favorite bookstore or at www.authenticandbrave.com/Kindreds, Kindreds. What would you say for someone who is listening who has some postpartum anxiety or depression? They're listening and they have an interest in this, but they're not quite sure that they fit the client that you're talking about, in part because they're not sure what trauma is. Like, they're like, oh, I had a baby, my birth was fine. I can't identify, kind of a big T trauma. So would this work for me?
Oh, yeah, I think that people, a lot of the times we think about big T trauma. You don't have to have a big T trauma to have serious health issues. So I look at it this way. I look at it like a river. Your big T trauma are these giant boulders that fall in and block the river flow. They're big. They take up a lot of space. It's very evident where the flow got blocked. Now what we have is little T trauma, which is something we have all had because we have all had an experience with a parent or a caregiver that hurt us to the soul and stuck with us. And we have carried that criticism in our heart since we were like 2. It's all about these limiting beliefs that we have that have come out of these things that we heard growing up about, oh, you're not pretty enough. You're not talented enough. You're not artistic. You can't handle this. You need all this help. Like all these things, all these messages, all of that is little T trauma because it is sitting in you and it is changing how you view yourself. It is limiting you. And those are like little pebbles. You need a lot of those pebbles to block the flow. But unfortunately, through our experiences with family, friends, the outside world, there's enough pebbles that flow in to basically stop the flow. And so anyone can benefit from EFT. You don't have to have had a serious trauma or feel like, oh, my problems aren't big enough. Anything that is making you not function optimally or not making you feel good is a good enough reason to go with EFT. EFT, I think, is amazing in the sense that you can use it for something as deep as some very serious traumas. And you can also use it every day for the fact that, you've kind of lost your cool right now. You got angry. It is that multifaceted. It could be something tiny and it could be something big. But I can tell you that everybody fits the profile that they have trauma in their life, even if they're not really being cognitive of it. Everyone has limiting beliefs and they are our little T traumas that have suppressed their authentic self and are not allowing us to lead that life.
Yeah, I love how you said, I love the analogy of the big boulder and the small pebbles, and you get enough small pebbles, and yes, it has the effect of a boulder, but these small pebbles happen, and I think sometimes people don't even realize it. So an offhanded comment that someone says to you, even as a kid, they say, oh, well, if you act like that, you're not going to be a good mom. And then once someone has children, that comes back to them. Like they question themselves of, am I going to be a good mom? Maybe I'm not going to be a good mom. And because I'm feeling some depression and I'm not connecting in the way that I'm quote unquote supposed to, that those pebbles keep dropping in the water and they find evidence for their limiting belief, which you have to kind of, again, reframe. And it sounds like tapping is one way to really do that and start to help rewire the brain to address the trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like tapping because it's easy to do. You don't need anything except yourself and a nice comfy place to sit, right? You learn it and you can apply it for the rest of your life. You don't have to be a specialist at it to do it for yourself, right? Like you learn it with someone and then you do it on yourself. And then you're right. Like the problem is with motherhood, a lot of these messages do come up. All of a sudden they resurface. All these things that you even thought you weren't paying attention to, they come out. Like I had that happen with me. And part of it is, of course, the postpartum depression itself. But part of it was what I was hearing growing up in my childhood was that everybody always treated me like I couldn't do things. So it was like, you're not able to do this. You can't do this. And so what happened when I had my baby and my postpartum depression hit, that was what was on loop in me. You can't do this. You can't take care of your baby. You can't swaddle the baby. You can't, change the diaper. And it got so debilitating that I was scared of being at home with my baby. I would be like, somebody has to be at home with me because I'm not capable of doing this. And like, it's not a big trauma in the sense that like nothing big happened in my life to really necessitate that. But that was a message I heard my whole life growing up. And the moment I had my kid, that's what came out is you can't do this, right? And that's hard. That's what continues actually feeding into your depression and your anxiety and makes you feel worse and incapable. And then the guilt and the shame comes up. Oh my God. Like
Oh yeah.
Right. You watch anything on social media and it'll make you feel like a horrible mom because, somebody is doing it better. Right. And we're comparing ourselves to the Joneses now on a bigger level of things that we can't even necessarily shouldn't even be comparing ourselves to. Right. The guilt and the shame, those are in some ways are traumas, deep-seated traumas. And
absolutely.
EFT is great at being able to help it faster. I'm a therapist by my background and, traditional therapy is obviously what we recommend as our first line of defense. The thing is with talk therapy, it is slow because we're talking very rationally, right? We need to be logical. Our feelings aren't rational.
Right.
They're not logical. And that's where the somatic aspect of EFT comes in and makes it that much faster because we're tapping into our primal, the thing that fires off the moment something bad happens, the thing that gets you dysregulated because your nervous system is so dysregulated that it immediately goes into anxious thoughts or depressive thoughts. And logicking ourselves out of it is really difficult.
It is really difficult. Yes, if not impossible. Right. I love it. Emotions aren't rational, right? And those sensations you're having in your body are really important to tap into. And so the tapping the tapping brings that mindfulness and brings it back into the body where the trauma is held and begins to release it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And the thing is, what I like about this is that I know that nowadays, one of the recommendations we do for everybody, really, not just moms, is mindfulness and meditations. And the one thing that I feel like is when you recommend a mindfulness or a meditation to a mom, you get the same thing.
Yep, absolutely. Who has time for that?
Exactly. Who has time for that, right? The cool part about EFT is you can do it and you can do that meditation essentially in 5 minutes, but it's also active. No one is requiring you to have a clear mind. No, in fact, what we're asking you when you're tapping is to focus in on that problem, actually bring it to the surface in your nervous system so your nervous system can actually work through it. We have learned how to shove our emotions down. So if you are, I'm a millennial and I've sort of grown up in this of like shove your emotions down type of a family of like, get over it. What did I get out of it? Some pretty serious GI issues. I know I'm not the only millennial woman out there who is struggling with that. So Ladies, those are your emotions, unfortunately.
Yes, they are trying to get out.
Yeah. And the extra weight and the cortisol disbalances, all of that has emotional underpinning. EFT can help you with that. It can help you get your nervous system back on track, which is what we're doing. We're regulating, we're clearing out all this emotional garbage so your nervous system can do its job that it hasn't been able to, because, there's those big and little boulders blocking it from working the way it's supposed to be working.
So if somebody is interested in knowing more, what do you suggest? Where do they go? How do they find you? What direction should they go in?
Yeah, so if you're interested in connecting with me, I do have a website. It's called parentonboard.com. I also hang out on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, and the handle is Parent on Board Coaching. On my website, if you want to sign up for my email list, you get access to my freebie vault. And then there I have an ebook where I talk a little bit more about EFT, and even have a really short EFT demonstration just for you to feel what it's like in your body and to see what it's like. I also have a few freebies I made about managing anxiety holistically. I also even have some stuff for your little kiddos, because that was my passion before I started focusing on moms, was the little kiddos. So I have some things there to help with the emotional regulation. So that would be a great way to start learning about it. And then reach out to me and talk to me personally if you're interested in working one-on-one. I'm also working on some courses. Don't know how long that's going to take, but there's lots down.
But there's lots coming. Absolutely. Yeah. And I will link all of your information on our webpage, authenticandbrave.com. So someone can go there and they can go find you. So what's one tip or trick someone can walk away with today to help their nervous system or just even their thought? Do you have any words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. Yeah. Start small. Don't look at this as a big project. Honestly, if you can even get 5 minutes to yourself in a quiet room just to relax, that's going to help. I always recommend going outside as much as you can. I know it's wintertime. I know it's hard. I live in Chicago, so I know it gets cold. But even with this, unless it's like horrible outside, which it is today, I try to make it out. In my case, lack of sun, but still, outside, get some fresh air, because I think it's really important. Being outside does regulate our nervous system. And that is something you can do. You can bundle your baby up, take them, go. It's important. It's good for you. It's good for the kids, but prioritize that outdoor time and prioritize quiet time for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes. You can't do 10, 15. That's okay. Do 5-minute increments and you're going to start feeling better. Just start there.
Yeah. And what I love about our conversation today is if anyone listening has any kind of anxiety, depression, you're not alone. I think that that's what's so important. I think it doesn't matter what your profession is or what your training is. These are things that most people experience at some point in their life. And there are tools that can help. There are people that can help. Just reaching out can make all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Reaching out, talking to someone is so important. Yeah, don't isolate. Don't be alone. There are others, and, don't get discouraged by those that do sort of stigmatize you and they're not on your team. There's lots of us that are on your team. And that's part of the reason why I love coming on to other people's podcasts, is to reach more people and to tell them that you are not alone. And if you're scared to tell your story, I'm here to share my story. So you know that there's others who have gone through the same thing. Yes, it was painful, but it's also possible to come out on the other end.
Well, Maria, thank you so much for being authentic and brave and bringing your message forward to women that really need to hear it. Or maybe if there's men listening and their partners really need to hear it. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth. I was so glad to share all of this with you and your listeners.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Authentic and Brave podcast. I want to remind our listeners that the content of this podcast is not a substitute for professional therapy or medical advice. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you are experiencing a mental health issue or any other medical concern, we strongly encourage you to seek help from a licensed professional. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, also called NAMI, helpline is a great resource and can be reached at 1-800-950-NAMI. or 1-800-950-6264.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Authentic and Brave podcast. If you want more, head over to the authenticandbravepodcast.com for show notes and sign up for the mailing list so you'll never miss an episode. If you're looking for inspiration, connection, and people like you and me, be sure to join my exclusive community on Facebook. The link's waiting for you at authenticandbravepodcast.com. This is Dr. Beth Russell signing off. See you next time.